back for another episode of Bad Ideas Podcast, dialing in from the northernmost tip of the East Coast, United States, almost. And on the phone, well, on the video call, right, with Tim Tully, mentor, friend, and CEO of Zelcore, the largest digital asset platform in the world, right?
Yes, and globally taking over the universe anytime now. So you might ask yourself, why would somebody like me, isn't it a bad idea to go on something called the Bad Ideas Podcast? Yeah, that's a good point.
This is probably a bad idea, but give us 2 minutes on Zelcore. I think what you're doing is something transformational and certainly like ahead of its time, but something that's becoming more relevant by the day.
Yeah. So digital assets company really focused on not picking winners and losers. I think so much of what's going on in crypto right now, and frankly, traditional finance was, lock you up into one thing, and as long as you were on our one thing, you're a winner, but anybody else is a loser, right? And so we've been focusing on trying to make sure that we have access for everyone to everything, right? And so that allows the customers to pick kind of the winners and losers, right? And so we've got technology that enables them to do that, gives them the power to be able to custody their assets and do all the things they want to do with that. And then we're actually on the cusp of rolling out something that is going to be empowering a lot of underserved protocols. So stay tuned for big news out of Zelcore in the next 30 days or so.
Yeah. I remember when we first met, it was really kind of displacing for me to think about the bank and assets as two separate things. Because in my head, it was like the bank is the money. It wasn't that I owned money and the bank was like a custodian of it for me. So now today, at least while we're recording, interest rates and payouts are fairly high, and a lot of neo banks are competing by offering crazy high returns to end consumers, and just the process of taking it out of one and moving it into the other, and like making all that move is a bit of a headache. And I think what's awesome about what you guys are doing is creating a central point for the assets. So moving from one to the other doesn't require all those steps. You just push a button and you're there. So big future with you. All right, enough of the smart stuff. Now we're going to look at something silly. You ready for our bad idea?
Let's go.
All right, so I'll read this to you, and then we'll spend as much time as we can talking about why it's awful, and then see if we can flip the script and turn it into something good. So without further ado, the bad idea is relevant. It's professional pothole photography, capturing the beauty of road craters for posterity. And I say relevant because we both live in Massachusetts, probably the pothole kingdom of the United States.
I don't think they have enough cameras in the state of Massachusetts to do that job well, but
yeah. I mean, the main problem that jumps off the page at me for this, Massachusetts is the perfect market for sure, but who's the customer? Like, there's nobody who's going to pay to document this because it's kind of an admission of guilt for the state that charges astronomical taxes and can't keep the roads in shape. And the people who are experiencing the potholes are too frustrated with the damage that it's doing to their cars to want to pay someone to document it. Like, who's the customer? There's no customer. There's no revenue source. There's no demand, right?
Yeah, I don't know. You know what, though, Nick? Here's what I would say. My wife and I, 2 Sunday nights in a row, were driving on 495, and there was a massive pothole in the middle right-hand side of the middle lane.
Uh-huh.
And one of those ones where the first time I was on the phone and never saw it, and, thought, oh my God, that's a tire and a wheel buster, right? Mm-hmm. Somehow we made it. The next week, I did the same thing. I was driving both times.
Same spot.
Passenger. Yes, same spot. And same, hey, idiot, how come you didn't see that the second time, But we called Mass DOT. There's a hotline or a tip line or something for potholes. And it would have been great if we would have had a picture. I'm not sure I would have paid for it, but it certainly would have been great to say, hey, here's a picture of where it is and all that stuff and getting it fixed.
Yeah, it's it's kind of a wild concept because there's a demand to fix the potholes, I think we would like our roads to function the way that they're intended to, and not cost us more than tolls. I guess tolls make sense. You're using a bridge or something public, but you shouldn't have to
Yep.
pay to repair your car because you hit a hole in the road, right? The road's table stakes for living anywhere. So thinking about like a pothole photography business, now on top of paying for the damage, you're also paying for a professional photographer to come in and shoot the hole. And I mean, you've been at the top of some big companies. You probably had to do headshots before, right? Like
Yes.
professional. You show up and they're paying
Are you?
five or 600. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were connecting my face with a pothole,
No.
kind of seeing. Oh, okay.
No, only I mean for the public, you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, and you guys just embarrassed my Patriots team. So maybe temporarily, but we're kind of accepting our identity. Back to
Yeah,
potholes.
it's only the second time I will, but who's counting?
Yeah, right. But going back to headshots, you show up to get your headshot done, and they're collecting 500-600 bucks a portrait, and they're taking 17 different photos of you, and they wind up picking one that makes you look good, which is good, and they're good at what they do. I don't knock it, but imagine spending 600 bucks and for someone to shoot a pothole. They have to show up with their gear, frame it the right way, make it artistic
Yeah,
enough.
yeah, yeah. I, Here's why I think it's a bad idea,
Hmm,
right? Let's go on that line you're going there, right?
hmm,
So, I worked at a very big company in Boston recently, kind of in the late, 20 teens. And we did pay $600 for a headshot,
hmm,
for the website. And I thought to myself, holy crap, that's a lot of money to spend for a freaking headshot. And within I don't know, a year after I left there, I worked at a startup
hmm,
where we took an iPhone shot for me for
hmm.
free and posted that on the website. Right. And so my sense is that most people could do as good a job with their iPhone doing a pothole as a professional photographer could,
Hmm.
right? And you're going to get it kind of on the run while you're in the car and whatever, right? So you're I don't know anybody, but they probably could do a better job, but they're cost wise, value wise, it'll never be that incrementally greater for whatever it would cost.
Yeah,
You know?
interesting. I mean, you're tapping into something huge. Apple just released their fifth iteration of the exact same phone, charging another $100 for it because it's titanium instead of aluminum now. But
What a cynic!
the,
What a cynic!
I mean, I'm always first in line to buy it, so I say that, but it's working on me. Um, the only thing they update is the camera, and it's probably for that exact reason, because with your phone you can compete directly, um, with, well, maybe not completely with a professional photographer. I do hope we get some inbounds from pro photographers who tell us that they can make these potholes look way better than an iPhone could. Um, but yeah, I mean, you're talking about competition, the availability and the cost totally negate the value of having someone professional come out and actually do your shooting for you. Um, what about demand conditions? You told a story about you and your wife, and then you in a conference call hitting a big pothole. Um, if it did damage your car, there is kind of a demand for you to. I mean, do you really want to see the pothole? What's the demand for other than fixing the car?
I think the demand is for evidence, right? Example
Mm,
there. Hopefully we didn't damage the car. I don't know. There was no visible damage, but who knows what went on kind of structurally.
mm,
But if I did have structural damage or other damage, I would love to have physical proof of it so that I could go to the state and say, hey, I had to spend $2,500 to get new wheels and new tires and et cetera, and you should pay for it because it was from this massive pothole on Route
well,
495.
there is some value, yeah. I mean, replacing the parts on the car could significantly offset the cost of a professional photographer. Maybe not the time of coordinating the whole thing or marking the pothole, but yeah, the thousands of dollars in damage it could do to the vehicle. There's something there.
Yeah. But Nick, what about if you were a photographer? Let's think about it this way.
Hmm.
You're a photographer and you set up camp on notorious places where the potholes are. You take pictures of someone's car going over the pothole, come up with some technology so that you email them the picture and charge him something for it.
I think that's a borderline good idea outside the fact that it would likely lead to people creating potholes so they could capture action shots of folks' cars getting destroyed. And, you don't want a perverse incentive in the business. Um,
Yeah, we also live in a world where privacy is paramount, and there's probably plenty of people that are not interested
being documented.
in someone capturing
Yeah,
their car,
that's a good
right?
point. The evidence point I think is relevant too. So personally, I didn't tell you this yet, but my right passenger door got kinked in pretty bad like a month or so ago, and um, our building. It's interesting. This is good marketing, but they built a parking garage that was too small for the amount of people that had cars in the building. So the solution, which obviously you can't expand the parking garage, was to valet, which you do have to pay a premium for. So they turned a problem into an upsell, which is super creative. But what the valet does is they just park the cars kind of around the parking spots. They do this in a couple garages in downtown Boston, but my car was in one of the lanes, and somebody came into the side of the door and like kinked the whole thing in. Um, and I knew like the only time I drove between the previous drop off and when I found the dent was to go up to Vermont to go camping. And the people who were there can vouch for the fact that there were no cars near my vehicle, and it wasn't hit while I was in. But because I didn't have camera footage of it happening and the building didn't have camera footage of it happening, it was like a 3 or 4 week fight with them to prove, hey, I dropped this off, there was no damage, now there's damage. And the only way there could be damage is if someone under your supervision hit the car. Um, so going back to the pothole, if you did have evidence that that caused the problem, and that's costing you money, there is some value there. What do you think?
Yeah, and I also think about the Waze and other mapping software companies of the world that are reliant on uh, active users in updating traffic conditions or whatever. So if you're a photographer, maybe you can sell your photo services to upload into Google Maps or Waze or whatever of potential traffic situations in different
Yeah,
places. We're solutioning.
let's do it.
Nick,
No,
maybe
no,
we're not
no.
supposed
Let's
to be
pivot. There's no
solution.
hard stop. I think we naturally want ideas to be good ones, and we're predisposed to make things work. That's the most fun part about the podcast for me. Even something as ridiculous as this, we kind of gravitate towards something good. And my mind is doing the same thing. I mean, I'm exactly the same lines of thinking. Have you ever seen those damage cams they put on the front of cars? Ubers have a lot of them in as like a rear view cam and a front view cam.
Yeah.
Um, that's where my mind was kind of going. You talked about GPS notification, but if you put a simple gyro in a camera and it triggers the camera to go off whenever the car moves or is jerked, you could easily GPS that and let people know where potholes are, but also track how many people hit them. Um, and you could probably
Mm-hmm.
pretty quickly associate a value of damage to the amount of cars and the type of cars that are hitting these things that would more than justify a subscription. I mean, it's like preventative insurance. If you have this thing in, the feedback loop is going to force the state to fix the roads, and you're not going to get hurt. It's
Yeah, Nick, you were starting where I started thinking, right? Which is, and by the way, I would say you need to have diversity in your portfolio. So if you're a photographer, this shouldn't be your primary business. You should have other. This is, winter season, the wedding photos be taken, right? But I was thinking about insurance companies might be interested
Mhm.
in this. They're the catch-all for this
Great
stuff,
idea.
so they might be interested in hiring photographers to be in the right locations, so they can have evidence to go back to um, whoever it is to go to the state and say, "Hey, I fixed Nick Petros' car, and here you need to pay for it," and all
Yeah,
that
I
good
mean,
stuff.
you just identified the buyer. They have a huge interest in finding ways to prove that this is not their responsibility because they're financially accountable for a lot of it. Um, yeah, I think even more than a professional photographer, like the way to make this a good idea is to kind of automate it. Because outside of the cost of a professional photographer, it's the impracticality of telling them where it is, remembering where it is, coordinating them to shoot, compensating them for it. There's a lot of logistics there, but if you have a little something in your car that automatically does it, even if it costs you 15, $20 a month, to prevent you from having to spend a couple thousand and eventually, if enough people do it, fix the roads, that seems like a pretty good investment. What do you think?
Yeah. Sounds like you're talking about a Tesla vehicle, which has that capability and probably uses it today. I know they're capturing, they're doing video camera uploads of data, driver behavior. They match driver behavior with the road data that's happening at the same time. They're using that to
Yeah.
train AI, and that's how they're going to build the
Yeah,
autonomous car.
yeah, which is another. I mean, talk about bad ideas. Can we jump onto that one for a second? I mean, what's your stance? What's
Which one?
no, no,
Tesla?
no, no, no. The autonomous car. I think the world of Tesla and Musk, but the autonomous car, I think, is doomed to fail for a number of reasons. But before I pollute the podcast, what do you think?
You know what? Here's what I think. My original inclination was kind of where you are. I'm a driver. I want to be
Mhm.
in control, right? But my dad is in his 80s. Unfortunately, he lives in assisted living. But prior to that, he was on the borderline of physically capable of driving, but he has dementia, so he was struggling with how do I get from point
Mhm.
A to point B. And it would have been great for him to have an autonomous driving situation where car came and picked him up at whatever time and took him to whatever location and then
Mhm.
took him back. So I think there's a lot of situations like that where if there was a trusted platform that really served well, there are a lot of really real life, real cases where that could be
Yeah.
beneficial to people.
So I think the upside is amazing, and we've seen enough sci-fi movies of people hopping into a driverless car and going to where they want to go faster and more efficiently than before. And I do subscribe to the concept, outside of the passion for driving that we share, um, that like sharing a car or not even owning the car, just having something that shows up and takes you to where you want to go is probably better, for the world and economically. But I think the problem with self-driving cars is it's impossible to teach a machine to make a bad decision well. And what I mean by that is when you're driving, things happen that you're not prepared for. And yes, AI can train with all the data we have available, but there's still random situations that are new that happen every day when you have hundreds of millions of people on the road. And your tire blows and you're having to choose between the child on the sidewalk and the adult in the car in front of you. Like, it's going to be hard to train a machine to do that, and it's going to be even more difficult to blame the machine for making the wrong decision when that happens. So it creates a situation where you can only move completely into self-driving when everybody does it at the same time, because then both cars in theory could be networked and they could control each other. But until you get there, you have human error, and human error requires you to make bad decisions well, like choose the worst of two well, and be responsible for those. And a machine can't
Yeah.
do that. Um,
Yeah. Nick, I bet if there's somebody who is pro autonomous listening to what you're saying, they're saying, Nick, you're right. Particularly like there's something exogenous to a driver interaction, like a walker or bicyclist or something like that. But they would say the amount of lives that get saved with having no accidents because of
mm,
autonomous driving um, will far outweigh in their case, the one or two people
yeah,
that get killed because the machine didn't make the right
yeah.
decision
I
about
do.
avoiding
I think it's a
contact.
good cost benefit. But you look at our society today in general, we focus on the rare instances, like we focus on the exceptions, not the rule. And that's going to run headlong
Yep.
into it. This happened twice. We need to ban all of them, never do it again. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of an all or nothing thing. And I think on a more humorous level, um, if anyone had to contemplate the idea of Microsoft releasing the software that controlled the car that protected their kids and family, they'd be a little horrified. And this is still software. So at some point, there's going to be a bug and everyone's going to drive off a bridge at the same time, and we're going to be like, oh, we didn't see it coming, even though it happened in every piece of major software ever before.
Yeah. But that's not going to happen in the money system with crypto. That's
Yeah, yeah,
software
no, no,
generated.
definitely not with the that's why the block is beautiful though. It references itself. It checks itself in perpetuity, you know, which
Yes.
is which is truly an innovation.
Yes. But you know what I was just thinking, Nick, just on this
Yeah.
idea of this bad idea. Look, there's no a pothole photographer is a shitty idea. There's no
Yeah.
two ways about it, right? But we're both business people, and our inclination, and I'm not above being super critical
Hmm.
of bad ideas, right? But human nature is to
Yep.
find a way to make it work, whether it's profitable or not, right? So it's funny, you and I are sitting here kind of thinking that the dimensioning the problem and
Yeah.
potentially the opportunity, and we all have a tendency to lean towards the how do I figure out a
Hmm.
way to make this work,
Yeah.
even if it's a bad idea,
Yeah. No, I
you
hear
know
you. And then you're tying that back to the autonomous car. How do we make that work? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. No, I think we will find a way to make
yeah
it work at some point. I also think someone will find a way to make pothole photography super profitable too, because there clearly is value there. Protecting cars, like we don't associate regular wear and tear damage as an expense of driving. It's just something we assume we have to deal with. But when you start to blame the road and the conditions of the road for that, I mean that's something you can solve. Someone maintains the road. So giving people leverage over that relationship's a good thing.
yeah yeah I think it's just one more data point, right? I'm a huge believer in whoever controls the data is
Hmm.
makes the rules, right? And if you can, that's just again one more data point. At what speed is a car driving? What's the road conditions like?
Hmm.
What are the pothole conditions like? Right? If I have all that data, I can
Hmm.
find a way to monetize it. Whether it's cost avoidance or whether
Hmm.
it's to generate revenue. Right? So yeah, I think somebody could make that work. Make
Yeah.
that
So
be
that,
a
I mean,
winning
that's the
formula.
path. Inject more data, less manual work, more data makes pothole photography for posterity a decent, potentially profitable idea. All right, cool. We went around the world.
I could see one. I could see you putting one over your shoulder somewhere in your office or study somewhere, some pothole that took your wheel or took your door or something. Just
Nah,
you want to just have it
nah. I
out
don't
there,
hold on to the
just
bad stuff, just the good stuff. Keep it there to remind you that you're gonna hit another home run at some point. Maybe beat the Cowboys in the future by a touchdown or two.
there
But
you
Tim, thank
go,
you so
there you
much
go,
for
there
hopping
you go.
on. This has been a ton of fun, and we tapped into some big things. Please be wary of Tesla executives for the next week or two after this publishes. Um, these are opinions held by us and no one else. Um, and for the people watching that want to learn more about Zelcore, should they reach out to you? Go to the website. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I'd probably say Zelcore.io is the website, and then
Mm.
we're on Twitter at Zelcore.io, and as I said, stay tuned. We got a lot of cool things coming out in the next 30 days. Wink, wink. New stable coin on a
Awesome.
blockchain
I'll
network.
see what we
So
can do
very
to get
cool
this
stuff.
published before that happens. So there's a little drop there. But thank you so much. We'll do this again soon.